Welcome, everyone, to the Success Elevated podcast. As always, I'm your host, Hayden Lee, and I am joined by a very special guest this week, returning guests. We were trying to figure out maybe this is her fourth or fifth episode coming on. Jesica Smith, who is our Director of Operations here at Spot On Solutions. Jesica, thanks for coming on the podcast.
I'm excited to be here. I love listening to you every week, so it's nice to actually be on the opposite end.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. We have a cool subject that we wanted to talk a little bit about today. But before we kind of dive into all things SEO, we'll tease it a little bit. That's what they say in the podcast biz. I'm a real professional at this. No, before we dive into SEO, I want to make sure that this is your fourth or fifth episode, and we haven't really got to know Jess all that much. And so I want to take a few minutes here at the beginning. We can chat a little bit about you. I think your background is really cool because you were technically the first hired employee here at Spot On Solutions. So we obviously, we've met and interviewed and talked about the three original partners, which was Katie Harris, Derek Priest, and Michael Johnson. Those three kind of formed what is Spot On Solutions. And you were the first employee that was hired here. So talk a little bit about what that experience was like. The story's really funny because, Derek kind of knew you from some local community events, and he was just told Katie one day, we've got to go hire Jesica. And so I'd love to kind of hear your perspective of that whole story, and then maybe talk a little bit about early days of Spot On Solutions, because that was 10 years ago now, right? It's been a while. So talk a little bit about that.
So I started working with Derek, worked for the Chamber of Commerce Potato Museum. We do have a potato museum now. And I first met him. He came walking through the door, and he was dancing and singing to moves like Jagger.
Oh,
that was my first impression of Derek. And then I also met Katie Harris when she was working at the Morning News. She came in and did some interviews with the museum. And a few months in, I get a phone call from Derek. He's like, hey, we want you to come out and we want to talk to you. I had no idea what it was about. Okay, what's Moves Like Jagger wants to talk about?
Yeah.
So I went out and they said, hey, we are starting this digital marketing restoration company. We want you to join us. I'm like, can I think about it?
Yes.
So I started part-time for a couple of months, and then I loved working with him so much I came on
full-time.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that story for a lot of reasons, but I think it shows a lot of faith in your from your perspective, because it's one thing to create an idea and be super excited about it because it's your baby. It's part of who you are. You create this cool thing. Oh, we're going to do a digital marketing company. It's going to be focused on restoration. It's an industry that hasn't been served very well. But it's another thing to get somebody to also buy in and believe into that, and somebody that maybe wasn't around for when the initial idea was created. And so I think that just shows a lot of who you are and what your character is. And anyways, I love that whole conversation. But you didn't come into this, Spot On Solutions and digital marketing. You didn't have a background in digital marketing. So what was it like, maybe especially as you were part-time, but then eventually came over to full-time, what was it like trying to learn how to be a digital marketer when you first got on here? Because I also didn't have a background, and my story is probably, I know my story is different because I had someone like you to teach me. You didn't have a Jesica to teach Jesica. So how did you learn how to be a digital marketer? How did you really develop those skills in the early days?
Well, I am lucky enough that it was Katie, Michael, Derek running the show. So I got up row front seat to seeing how they did digital marketing.
Love it.
So I learned firsthand from everything. And you need to listen to these guys go through. It is amazing. Even today, where I've been doing this for 10 years, it still blows my mind of how much Katie and Michael know.
Yeah.
But the market's ever changing. So it was definitely a learning curve. I would learn something I understand this, and then 3 months later it changed. I'm I need to learn this again.
Yeah. That's the one thing that I think has been so cool about this industry in general is you can have a degree in it, you can have even experience in it, and at the end of the day, you still have to learn something new every day. And that's in large part just because of what the internet is. The internet was a completely different animal 10 years ago as it is now, and it'll be different 10 years in the future than what it is today. So you just always have to be learning and growing. Yeah, you can have a degree, you can have a piece of paper that says, oh yeah, I understand digital marketing, or I have all these years experience in digital marketing. That's cool, but it doesn't help prepare. Well, it might help you prepare a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily help solve the problem of like, how is the internet going to be different tomorrow? Or how is Google going to be ranking websites tomorrow, right? Like it's going to be ever changing and ever evolving. And so I think that's, it speaks to your personality, and it speaks to, I think, anybody that wants to be successful in digital marketing. You have to be willing to pivot and change all the time. And that's, we're constantly pivoting strategies and how we operate with our customers, because we have to.
Yeah, you have to be 2 steps ahead. And Google can be unpredictable. So you definitely have to have some critical thinking skills to be able to stay on top of that.
Unpredictability is a huge piece of it. And I think that's a perfect transition into what we kind of wanted to chat a little bit about today. And so we've done this a handful of times. Spot On Solutions will bring in, we have some awesome experts on our team. I think we've talked social media a little bit with like Melissa, and Sierra. We've talked a little bit kind of tangentially about SEO, but we wanted to dive in a little bit more today in kind of a way to tease a future episode. Katie Harris is going to be on a panel at an upcoming trade show event where she's going to be talking about SEO. And so that's going to be a buzzword that's going to be thrown around a lot. Katie's going to come on the podcast here in a couple of weeks with another special guest that we won't announce today, but they're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about what SEO is. And so we wanted to give people today kind of a 30,000 foot view of what is search engine optimization, what is SEO. And so I'll let you kick it off, and then I'll kind of pepper in because you're way more well-versed in it. This is kind of your bread and butter. I feel like a lot of your day is evolved around SEO. And so what in your simplest description, what is SEO or search engine optimization?
So simplest description is maintaining your presence, just so your website content, to be able for your potential customers to find you on a search engine like Google or Bing. And this is strictly working on content and technical aspects. So you're not paying like a Google or a platform. You're not paying per click to have your website appear. You're doing it organically.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's the most common question that we get asked, I feel like, is like, what is the difference between SEO, search engine optimization, and like Google ads or pay-per-click? That's that's even a piece of like our training process as a team internally, is like PPC, pay-per-click, versus SEO, search engine optimization. And yeah, the easiest way to describe it is just how you did. Like it's helping your website rank better organically by, manipulating content and helping your site technically function better so that it shows up better on Google, but you don't necessarily have to pay for that spot, or you're not bidding on that spot. And that's the piece that I feel like people get so confused on is, they'll do a search. Again, in our industry, most commonly that search is like water damage restoration or water damage companies near me or something like that. And they see, what are these results up at the top of the page? Well, the first 3 or 4 of those are paid results, but everything below that, I shouldn't say everything because there's some paid ads down at the bottom, but a lot of the links and things below that are those organic links. And those companies have done something to manipulate their website, to write content on their site, or help it, populate better technically so that it ranks better on the internet.
Yeah, it's kind of like telling Google, hey, I'm so awesome, look at all my stuff. And they're like, oh, I like you because you're relevant. Versus, hey, here's some money. Put me at the top of your list. So Google will take both options, but one organic takes a lot more finesse, and it takes a lot more time because you're winning a popularity contest. Totally.
And it's, to your point, can be much more challenging because it's not just, Google ads, it boils down to you are bidding on that place. You are saying, okay, I will pay X amount of dollars per click in order to show up in the first spot, the second spot, third spot, the third spot, whatever. But you're telling Google, okay, I will bid X amount of dollars to be in one of those spots. Versus SEO, where it's a popularity contest. You're trying to show Google, hey, I've got a really strong website. I've got all of this content. It's really relevant for what this person is searching for. Help my website rank a little bit better. I don't know if there's much you can speak to this just because the internet has changed so much, but What do you feel like has changed over the years, or what's been the most significant change over the years when it comes to search engine optimization? Is like, how different is it now than it was 10 years ago when you first got started?
Oh, there have been so many changes. Now, back in the day, it was all about volume of content.
Yeah.
And how much
How many
you put
pages?
out. Yeah. And now, with the sophistication of the algorithm and AI generated content, Google's very focused on human first. Like we're building relationships. We want customer first. We want the experience. So now it's more about quality and connecting with the audience instead of just telling Google, this is what I provide, find me people.
Yeah, totally. And it's even to that point, like that's something that's, I mean, AI, Chat GPT and all of those like buzzwords that people have been talking about, those have been out now for, coming on a couple of years. But there's been updates to that algorithm as recently within the last few months. I mean, there was a big content update, 3 or 4 months ago that we had to go in and help some clients make some changes on their site because Google came out with a big update that was flagging some content that Google determined was duplicate content. It's like, okay, we didn't write this to be duplicate content, so let's go in and let's help make some edits to that to help it rank better. And those updates are happening constantly, all the time.
Yeah, I believe in 2022, they had well over 3,000 algorithm updates. And these are behind the scenes. Google will announce maybe 2 to 4 a year that's like
major ones.
But they're updating all the time.
Yeah. So you break that down, 2022, if there was 3,000, that's like, maybe a little less than 10 a day. And so the algorithm is constantly being changed. They're gonna flag content that they didn't flag a month ago, or they're gonna maybe help content rank better than it did a month ago. And so it's like you've always got to be on top of this stuff, way more so than Google Ads. Google Ads, totally, yes, you have to be aware of situations. You have to be aware of when Google's making updates to Google Ads and those platforms. But SEO is way more crucial because, to your point, a lot of that time, sometimes those updates, they don't even really talk about. And so like you've got to be aware of that stuff like 24/7 almost, it feels like, in order to make sure the content's doing as good as it can. Do you feel, let me rephrase. What are some common misconceptions out there when it comes to search engine optimization? What's a common question that a client is always throwing at you?
First one is, it's been 30 days. Why am I not in the number 1 spot everywhere? That's like thinking of SEO versus PPC. We'll step it there. Think of organic as you're building a house. You're investing in your equity. It's going to take a few months. You're getting everything ready. You're building a foundation. And then as a homeowner, you're going to have to continually maintain this property so it doesn't fall into shambles. So that's kind of like what SEO needs. It takes time to build up that foundation, to build the trust with Google, to show them that you have some equity. And then you need to keep adding content and updating it to stay up with the algorithm. Pay-per-click, you can put a campaign together. It's like renting. Here's my first month's rent. I'm ready to go. I'm living here. PPC, you do that too. There's updates and some maintenance. And as soon as you stop renting, you're done with that property. You're no longer invested. So you stop PPC, that stops. So it's kind of a very different thought process. So ranking for SEO, it's not going to be a quick turnaround. It's going to take time to build up that equity. So you want to have a consistent strategy, and you want to work with a marketing agency that understands that and helps you focus on a goal that's long term.
Totally. Yeah, any marketing agency or any marketer, because I feel like, especially with SEO, you'll find a lot more like, what's it called? Where people work on their I can't think of what the word, but you'll not necessarily agencies, but you'll have individuals that are like, oh yeah, I can come in and make some changes to your website. And I feel like that's a common thing that people will be like, well, this person told me they could get me to the top page of Google next week or next month. And it's like, that's not how the internet works. And it's so scary that there are people out there that are like saying stuff like that, because that's just not how SEO works.
And you might see, some of this is like black hat SEO, like, I don't want to call it dark web, but it flies under Google's radar. Google finds it, they're not happy. So if you have an SEO strategy that works right away, chances are when the next algorithm update comes out, you're going to end up losing all those rankings, and you're going to end up starting again from scratch.
Yep.
Because Google will highly penalize any practices that don't fit their policy.
Exactly. Just because Google didn't catch it now doesn't mean they won't catch it eventually. And that's, I think, another issue that happens a lot, at least with clients that I see, that they'll come to us, or maybe they'll leave us. Maybe they'll be like, oh, we're going to go a different direction with our marketing. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. Like, you want to go somewhere else. And a lot of times they've gone a different direction because they've been told, oh, their SEO could be ranking way higher almost immediately. And yeah, maybe it does for a month or two, but Google always catches up to you, and then eventually they will lose a bunch of rankings. And that's the scary problem, because then you got to almost start over from scratch, and it's really, really unfortunate. So, we tell our clients almost all the time, like, we want to start seeing significant results somewhere between 6 to 12 months after you come on to us. And significant results are going to be different for everybody. We don't promise any kind of first page or number one result things. That's just not how we operate. We don't work in those kind of worlds. But we like to see, some increases. We like to see you moving up the rankings in Google. We like to see you getting more traffic, more people on your website, all of those things, within 6 to 12 months. But that's a long commitment. And that's why SEO for a lot of people can be kind of scary, because it's not something that can be done immediately like Google Ads. Any other questions or common misconceptions you feel like? I mean, that's probably the biggest one. That's the one I hear the most often too, is like, how long is this going to take? Or, is this something, why are my rankings not higher after only, a month or two of doing it? And so that's probably the most common thing. But any others that you can think of?
The other one is, well, I'm not ranking. Okay, let's take a look at your website. If your website isn't appealing, it's not fast, it's not comfortable for someone to go to, it doesn't matter if you're ranking, your SEO isn't going to convert. It's not going to get your potential users to come in and actually be customers, because they're not getting the experience they need off your website.
Yeah. Domain authority is something that's a big player into SEO as well. And, that's a whole other can of worms. We could have a whole other podcast about domain authority, but it's essentially like how strong your website is, how fast it is, what kind of how many pages are there. I mean, there's so many things that fit into domain authority, but if your domain authority isn't very strong, your SEO is going to be affected by that as well. And so, yeah, we can be writing lots of content and lots of awesome content that's optimized and built just correctly for Google's algorithm. But if the rest of your website sucks, or if it's not loading very fast, or if there's a bunch of 404 errors, you're not going to have a lot of success with SEO.
And to jump back into the domain authority real quick.
Yeah.
There is a question we get is like, why can't I just buy a bunch of backlinks?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that going to improve my domain authority? Essentially, no, because you don't know how toxic those links are. Just because you buy a bunch of links doesn't mean that Google trusts those links.
Yep.
So you got to be very careful when you want to step into something like that.
Yeah, love it. Well, let's we want to kind of use this as an opportunity. We're obviously going to tease and dive in a little bit deeper into SEO in some future podcasts with Katie and that special guest, the panel that they're going to be on. So we don't have to necessarily spend a bunch more time, but I think it would be good to kind of mention maybe what are some things that you think an individual out there that's listening, let's say they've got a website created, but they haven't really done much SEO stuff. What are some really basic things they could start looking at to see, okay, has their website been optimized for SEO, or maybe some things they could do themselves to help their website start ranking better, short of obviously calling up Spot On Solutions and getting some help with some SEO. What are some things you feel like that a listener out there could do to help their website do a little bit better?
Some basic for any of the services you offer, make sure you have some kind of page of content. Yeah. Service pages are great. That way Google can find
and dedicated.
Yeah, dedicated.
Yeah.
Know your audience and what they're looking for. There's a great tool called SEMrush where you can go type and say you have water damage. You want to go look at water damage. It'll give you some top performing content. You can do content search. Like, what are people actually searching for, so I can write some content based on those searches.
Yep.
And that's going to help you there too. A piece that we haven't really covered at all is your brand is huge and important with organic rankings too. So don't leave out reviews in Google Business Profile, because that can really help you too.
100%. Like having lots of reviews, and both positive and negative, but having a lot of good reviews on the internet, responding to those reviews, those are closer tied to your SEO than you think. So make sure you're going out and pursuing reviews. Just because you have 4 or 5 5-star reviews doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be competing very well. Like, you've got to go out there and try and get as many reviews as you can, consistently updating those reviews and replying. Like, that's a huge, huge piece to it. And I think, again, we'll talk more about that in the future, but that's a crucial piece to it. I love your recommendations for people out there with their websites. Like, the dedicated service pages is a huge one that I see a lot of, like, home-built websites, right? That people will create a website because they're like, man, I'm starting this business. I just got to have something, right? And that's great, but you'll get off on the right foot even more so if you have like some dedicated service pages. That's super helpful. Make sure the content is good, that it's relevant to your audience. Like, little things like that can really, really make the difference, especially if you're just starting out. And then eventually, as you're really trying to be more aggressive with it, reach out to, us here at Spot On Solutions. We help with SEO. That's a huge piece of what we do every day. And we can kind of help take it to the next level. Like, we want you to start off on the right foot. Those are definitely some things you can do. And then, we can take it from there. So I love it. Anything else, Jess, SEO wise, you want to make sure we mention today? Anything crucial for our listeners that you feel like they need to, or maybe any other common misconceptions or something when it comes to SEO?
Oh, just don't leave it out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
If you are putting a marketing strategy together, consider organic, whether you do something small like write content or you hire someone like Spot On Solutions to do the full gamut. But you should be doing something to stay competitive, because if you're not, your competitors are. Totally.
If you're trying to be more competitive on the digital marketplace, like, your competitors, if you're not careful, can start outranking you pretty quickly. That reminds me, don't search for yourself. That's a common question I get all the time from clients, that people say, well, I Googled myself and I'm not ranking very well. And it's, either maybe current clients of ours that we've just started helping them with SEO, or maybe, even individuals that we are trying to maybe potentially bring on as a new client. Our sales director, Bryce, has talked to people that will say to him, well, I searched for myself and I rank pretty high. I don't think I need your guys' help. And that's such a huge misconception, going back to the tool you recommended, SEMrush. SEMrush is a great tool that can help you know actually how you're ranking on average. Because if you're just Googling, 9 times out of 10, what you're seeing is not what your customers are seeing. And so, yeah, you might rank really well, and that's awesome. But for your, Joe Blow down the street, you don't rank very high, and your competitors are outranking you because they have better content that Google thinks is more relevant for that customer. And so, as much as it's a tempting thing to want to search for yourself and look for ads or look for your competitors' ads, or try and see how your website's doing, that's not the way to go about it. SEMrush is a great tool that we use internally. That's something you can look at to see actually how you're ranking, or reach out to our team here at Spot On Solutions. We give out free audits all the time to let you know how your website is actually ranking. And that's a common thing I get asked all the time. Well, I Googled myself and I'm doing pretty good, or we're not doing good. What the heck's going on? And 9 times out of 10, what you are seeing is not what your customers are seeing.
Yeah, and I can elaborate on that a little bit.
Go for it.
Google uses hundreds of data points for that.
Oh, yeah.
And because they're doing user first, what you search for, Hayden, is different than what I search for.
Yep.
So if I want to look up tabby cats and I'm located in Pocatello and I have a history of looking up cute outfits, I'm going to get a different search than Hayden that might be looking up tabby cats and rock and roll.
Yeah.
There's just these little things, nuances that Google picks up on that they tie to your specific search.
Yep.
And if you're a business owner and you're Googling your name and you don't click on your site, they're going to be like, you know what? They don't really like this site, so we're not going to show it to them.
We're not going to show it to them. Or sometimes if you Google and you click on yourself every time, that could be skewing the results, right? Google's like, oh yeah, they love this link. And so that now you're telling yourself, oh, I rank number 1 for everybody. I rank number 1 all the time. And it's like, that's not really true. And so, yeah, even using an incognito browser, even using a different computer, all of that doesn't necessarily help. I hate saying don't do something, because it's not necessarily going to hurt anything, but don't search for yourself, or at least don't take that as the 100% whole truth.
Yeah, and don't search for yourself if you're paying for ads.
Yes, definitely. That's a whole other ballgame. Definitely don't do that, because that will actually cost you money. So awesome, Jess. That was super, super helpful. I think, the cool thing about SEO, There's a million different directions we can go down. There's so many different things we can talk about. And I think we're going to have future podcasts diving in. Obviously, we're going to have Katie on to talk a little bit about what she's going to be mentioning at that future event. But then I think we're going to have you on, Jess, to talk a little bit more about all things SEO. We can go more into maybe domain authority and how that helps, or content writing, all of those things that I think would be super, super applicable. So thanks for coming on today. Really, really appreciate it. Let's close up by asking you the same 3 questions we ask all of our guests. We have not, even though this is your 4th or 5th time coming on, we haven't done this yet with you, so I wanted to make sure we gave you the chance to do it. First question. Favorite book or podcast that you've read or listened to recently, or you're reading or listening right now?
Daring Greatly by Brené Brown is one of my favorite books.
That's awesome. I've not heard of that one by her. I've heard of a bunch of her books, but I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a great one. It's about getting out there and doing. Yeah, just doing it. And if you haven't read it, I recommend.
Love it. Yeah. Second question. I know you wear a lot of hats here at Spot On Solutions, and I know your day is bombarded by questions, mostly by me, but by other members of the team. So I feel like we all bug the crap out of you. But how do you relax at the end of a long day? I know your days are long here, and you've got a lot on your plate. How do you relax and recharge your batteries at the end of a long day?
I do 2 things.
Okay.
One that is more common. I go home and I paint because I have artistic abilities outside of work. The other one is I go home and de-stress by doing finances.
Oh, how does that de-stress? I'm not sure how that works.
I love future planning. So doing my finances kind of helps me stay on track.
And I know you've been looking at potentially purchasing a home. So I know that you've probably been doing a lot of the finances side of things. So
I have.
That's awesome. That's great. Maybe I'll have to hire you to do my taxes one of these days. No, I'm just kidding. That's awesome. That's a great thing to do. And yeah, you're an awesome artist. If anybody that's listening, if you've ever made it into the Spot On Solutions office, there's a lot of art hanging around, especially in the lobby area. That was all done by our very own Jess. So great stuff. Last question. And feel free to take this whatever direction you want. You can go back to your days at the Chamber, or early days at SOS, or now in your new role as Director of Operations. But if you could rewind to younger time and talk to younger Jess and tell younger Jess one thing, what would that one thing be?
It's okay to believe in big things.
Yeah, I love it. So one of our values here at Spot On Solutions, and I know it's a big favorite of yours, and it's a big favorite of mine too. I'm always been a big picture guy, and we can do big things. We can believe in and do big things. So love it, Jess. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was a little last minute, and I really wanted to talk about this subject because this is something that's just been on my mind lately. I get asked lots of SEO questions by our clients here, as well as people that aren't clients. I talk to friends and family members that own businesses that talk to me about SEO, and this is something that's just always on top of everyone's mind. How do I get my website to rank better on the internet? And I think we addressed a lot of those questions today. So thanks again, Jess.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Hayden.
This has been Success Elevated, making you a little bit better one show at a time. Thanks for joining us. Please subscribe on YouTube or any other major podcast platform to listen to more episodes. We are proudly brought to you by Spot On Solutions. If you'd like to learn more about how we can help you grow your business, please check us out at spotonsolutions.com.